The Ensemble podcast is intended for professional financial advisors. This content is created in partnership with our sponsor, Net Wealth Investments Limited, ABN 85090 569 109, AFSL 230975, and is limited to publicly available information. Before acting on any general advice, you should consider whether appropriate and obtain financial advice from a qualified financial advisor. Ensemble does not hold an AFS license and does not provide any financial advice or services or endorse any general advice. If a PDS or IM exists, you should obtain a copy and review it thoroughly before making a decision.
AdviceTech. As if it wasn't enough to be across TMDs, Alpha, Beta, Rule of 72, and all the other nuances of financial advice. Now, advisors are expected to be across all the technology options too, and there's so many of them. But never fear, Peita D is here. Join me each week on a journey of discovery through the software and apps on offer for advisors and advice businesses. So let's dive in, fellow advice explorers.
This podcast is proudly sponsored by NetWealth. Imagine a world where you can offer clients access to local and international investments. A world where you can engage with clients meaningfully, backed by powerful data and insights with mobile-friendly technology. A world where you can build business efficiencies through scaled managed accounts and bulk reporting. And a world where you can get all the latest news, research and insights to spot the changes that really matter. Wealth is more than just money. It's about opportunity and progress. A world of opportunity awaits you at netwealth.com.au/woo.
Hello and welcome to the Ensemble AdviceTech Podcast. I'm Peita Diamantidis, and the guest joining me here today to deep dive into MUA, well, his earliest training was in fact in banking, would you believe, but has worked previously as a creative director at Elkline, which is a funky German sustainable outdoor clothing brand. He's created the concept of identity-built branding, would you believe, and I love it. Based on a Believe sign in the background of his screen that I'm looking at now as a fellow Ted Lasso fan. So that just makes him awesome as a given. And in the last couple of years has joined the ranks of SaaS solutions creators, which is why he's here with us today. Thank you so much for joining me on the show, Julius Geis. Woo! Hey. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Peita. What a nice intro. Thank you.
Not at all. You're very welcome. All right. So in a second, we'll dive into all things MUA, and there's so much to cover. I feel like I need to give a public sort of service announcement to the listeners here when this is an app that's quite different to what we would normally cover. I'm excited about it. I think it's really fascinating, but be ready to be taking on a journey that's just a little different to AdviceTech going forward. But before we do that, let's just get to know you a bit better, Julius. What is your most used emoji? Do you even use emojis?
Yeah, so I would not really, I have to say. It's a bit of a contradiction, right? Because our app is pride itself that we use symbolism to catch emotions. So in my personal life, I hardly use emojis. Maybe a heart symbol to my wife.
Okay.
Living in Hawaii, we use the shaka sign.
Yes. But
I to be honest, I don't use real emojis. Yeah, no.
Perfect. Well, let's cover the smartphone too. So most of us probably need those surgically attached to us. We just can't let them up, can we? Which is a bit dangerous. But if you had to delete all of the, extra apps off your phone, off your smartphone and just kept 3, what would you keep?
I think I could really keep it I only could keep one. That one would be enough. And that's LinkedIn. I do like being on LinkedIn. That's the only social network I'm being active on and been there for I don't even know, 2006 or something. So for a very long time. And all the other ones I wouldn't need. So I'm not a gamer. I'm not really into photography. So again, there's this from my personal side and that what you would see maybe and think there's this interesting relationship I have with technology. So LinkedIn would be my answer.
Okay. I love it. So using a phone, heaven forfend, as a phone. Is that the main thing you use it for?
Yeah. And maybe a quick side story. For many times already, I buy frequently these very old phones who can only do text messaging and calling to detox myself from smartphones. So I don't know.
Nice.
Yeah, I have that. It's a very interesting relationship I have with technology.
No, look, I completely understand. As somebody that grew up without such things, I completely understand it. And really, because the only time that I think, oh, really the world is better now is when we all go out somewhere and you're meeting friends and you realize that without a phone that you can call them to try and coordinate, it was much harder. Like trying to get 20 mates together in one place was quite a process before we all had phones in our hips. But aside from that, I'm completely with you. It's not something we need. It's just something that can add, but sometimes also subtract. So
but maybe it's also my German side in me. If you tell me you have to be there at 2 p.m., I am there at 2 p.m.
Exactly,
so it's just, I don't need a phone for that either.
We're just organized. Why do we need it at all? Oh, I love it. So let's dive into MUA. Now, like I said before, this isn't an advice tech tool as much as it is a tech tool. Talk to me about, let's go really high level just to get everybody sort of positioned about what it, where it fits. What category broadly of technology does it fit under? If somebody had to label the app, what would they put it under, and what sort of tools are you normally sort of lined up against, as comparisons?
Yeah, so we are anywhere between employee engagement and corporate wellness.
Okay.
So I think we're in between, to use an Australian company, Culture Amp, and maybe Headspace for business.
Yeah, okay. Well, and Headspace, I'm trying to remember whether I've mentioned it previously on the podcast, but Headspace, the gentleman that does the voiceover for Headspace can lull me into the most relaxed state ever. I think that voice should be everywhere. If I could have that as my alarm in the morning, I tell you, it's fantastic. Okay, so that helps us get a bit of a position, and we should start with if you can tell us what MUA stands for. What's literally the letters stand for?
It stands for Me As All.
Okay.
And it describes the relationship and the interconnectedness we have within organizations. Right. And our belief is that all change in organization starts with the me, and so with the self, with the employee, and then there's a ripple effect within the organization.
Absolutely. And I've seen that happen a lot. We're in financial services and of course, therefore engage a lot with large corporates, the big, whether it's banks or insurance companies and things like that. And there's a lot of talk in those businesses about innovation. It'll be this, we've got to innovate, but very little time or energy spent on the individual and their imagination and ideas. Do you know what I mean? Like they're just told that something that they should do, not something that you nurture within the individual first before you expect them as a business to do that. So,
or within a culture in general, I would say that most businesses do not have a culture that nurtures innovation.
Yeah.
And yes, the individual prosperity is definitely a part of it, but a lot of companies still act from a place of control.
Yes.
Controlling people, keeping control, having everything measured.
Yes.
But if we tap into that, what we're going to do throughout the podcast, tap into that emotional context of us humans, there's just a part where we have to let go of control and just, trust the natural development.
Yeah. And I think, like you say, how can we, innovation really at its core is about imagination. That's, you can't innovate unless you can come up with things outside of what your experience is. You've got to be able to put yourself outside of that to come up with ideas. And I don't think you can use your imagination when there is control. It's literally, to me, almost the opposing sides of the same thing. It's really letting go is what lets you think outside the box. So I'm with you. That level of restriction and control stifles that sort of thing. And if ever there was a time when both resilience and imagination are going to be required, it's all the fast-paced change and action and demands and intensity that's coming for people. So I'd love to know what took you on this journey. Given your background, I wouldn't have said from a really sort of academic sense, just looking at it superficially, that this would be where you head. So what triggered this? How did that come about?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of two things, like my personal development. So looking through my vita, I started my career in advertisement, was successful there in an early age, my mid-20s. I was in charge of, for example, consumer brands all consumer brands of Microsoft, their creative campaigns, did automotive, beer companies, a lot of bigger bigger companies and bigger budgets. So on a career perspective, personally, you would say this guy has figured it out.
Yep.
However, every time at this point in life when you would ask me, how do you feel or what brings you joy, I couldn't really answer this question. And I think it was when I was 26 or so that I felt something that you would call burnout today.
Yep.
That I was just really out of energy, I just was not happy and kind of like this draining feeling. It's just something, I don't know, those who have described it maybe know what I'm saying. It's very undefined. You're in this vacuum position. It's kind of like, it's a really weird place.
Yeah.
So that is one side, because that led to traveling the world, meeting really exciting people, Deepak Chopra, Hawaiian artists, different cultures that kind of like helped me understand there's more to life than the concept that I knew from growing up. And so let's call it a spiritual awakening, maybe. And then in the other hand, I was, like throughout my career, always interested in the concept of identity, which led, like later on to the methodology of identity built branding, which basically was the approach that instead of building brands from the outside in, which usually a company who builds a brand has an idea of a target group. So we always focus on the outside. There's a consumer, there's a target group, there's a market. And so based on these concepts, we're developing a brand to fit those needs or those demands. My idea was kind of like from observation that there's so many times are these disconnects. Well, how about we build something from the inside out? So something that comes from the intrinsic identity of a company. So the product on a brand is more like a natural evolution of that identity than an kind of like outside creation or that fakeness that sometimes are embedded in brands. Yeah. So that job led me to more and more work with change and organizational change, because branding and changing, when you don't do it outside in, so when you do it inside out, it goes hand in hand with changing an organization. And while I was working on these change projects, I realized how hard it is for people to change. Yeah. And one of the biggest factor is the disconnect we have with our own emotions and the ability to understand these habits that kind of like run in autopilot, that kind of like we're not aware of those. That's why we call them, we run on autopilot, that hold us back from changing towards that new idea or that new idea that we want to move forward to. Right. So that was the moment when I kind of like connected both sides of me into this concept of MUA. So I used a mindfulness exercise, which I use on a personal level, and kind of like embedded it into this business exercise, which mainly said, dear leadership, please write down your daily activities and then rate them with an emotion. And by doing so, over time, you become aware of your emotions. You can recognize them, you understand them, and you can manage them. And interestingly, too, in the concept of change, you will become more aware of your daily decisions, the habits that benefit the change, and these habits that hold you back from change. And that's kind of like was the starting point of MUA.
And it's so interesting. I mean, there's so many things to touch on. I mean, journaling is something that if anybody's ever touched on wellness at all, like any... You only need to have watched a TED talk, or like there's not much you need to have dived into this as a topic, and journaling comes up, through people from lots of different backgrounds. And it's so interesting to me to apply that to work, because it's literally everywhere else applied to anywhere but, like it's everything else. No, do it about the start of your day, the end of your day, the weekend. It's often not focused on work, which is so interesting, given for many of us, what we're doing at work is the largest portion of our time. Exactly. There is some almost obviousness about that's like, well, of course this is what we should be doing. And I agree. And I've caught myself in this, there's almost zombie state we can get ourselves into when we're working. It's the shuffling along, just keep on going, and it's only once you become aware of what you're doing and reflecting on it. And it I guess for people that haven't done that in any part of their lives, it sounds like it's something that's going to take a lot of time. But like, am I going to sit on my own and cogitate, gazing at my navel for an hour each day? It's not that. It can be something that's relatively quick to do, but it's about a new habit, isn't it? So this isn't even changing them to begin with. It's just adding a new one, which is this awareness and reflection, so that then you can start to see what you're doing.
And I want to add, I think what we made different. So we do have a journal in our app as well. So there's a journal app in the app. But I think we really simplified the concept of journaling. So
awesome.
It's when I say writing down your daily activities, I mean that literally. This conversation is written down, from breakfast to morning coffee, talking with colleagues, going into the lunch break, writing a proposal, meeting with a client. All of these activities are, have to be we ask you to write them down into our application. You of course can integrate them with your calendar, so you don't have to do double entries and stuff like that. But we are for retrospective, and it is for reflection, and there's a lot of beauty in there, and it doesn't take a lot of time. So in our app, our average user takes between 5 to 10 minutes a day max. 5
fantastic.
is sufficient.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, what I really like on our product on MUA is that it doesn't take that. Journaling can be tricky. So I do journal, but it's sophisticated in a way. It's kind of like meditation, right? When people say meditate and you sit there, and then it's a kind of like an overstimulation, that the silence can be really traumatic.
Yeah.
So I think the way we designed this makes it really easy for you to get access to that, to tap into that space of retrospective and reflection in a very gamification, in a very kind of fun way. Yep. And then you can add journaling in addition. So our team helps people to journal when we walk companies to journal exercises. We have template systems we provide. So we really make it easy. And we also customize questions for specific needs. So
nice. Okay. Yeah. So, and I should have asked actually how to say the app name MUA, which sounds much better than MUA. MUA sounds like a university. Yeah, so I'm saying it. It's all right. It sounds far nicer. So it's so much better. So I caught that. All right. So let's talk about the users. So clearly the obvious one is the employees themselves. So this is, the staff, and I'm assuming that it can be small, medium-sized businesses as well as large corporates. That really it's just somebody working within a team. So
yes, but it includes. I want to say that it includes leadership.
Yep.
Because so sometimes when we say employee, people kind of say, "So okay, it's the
worker bees,
work base, has nothing to do with management or higher management." No, so it of course includes leadership. Leadership benefits greatly from emotional intelligence, which we ultimately develop with MUA. Yep. So we encourage all people working in an organization to go through our software and exercises.
And look, I think I'd even go so far as to say that it could be a must for leadership, because I think when you think about big corporates particularly, then as you start going up those layers, then you go from somebody who's performing tasks and to-dos, and therefore the accomplishment or the I got things done today can be quite high. Like you can get some good feedback on that. The higher you go, the less it's about to-dos, and the more it seems like it's endless meetings, right? And it's just always, and I think this type of thing could highlight how you feel about that, how you can then adjust what you do. Like I think that could be super valuable at a leadership level.
Yeah, absolutely. And also for C-level. So there's the base level of MUA we call self-awareness. So it's the context of emotional intelligence, or EQ. Mm-hmm. The base level of EQ is self-awareness. So without self-awareness, you can't build anything that is emotional or intelligent. Yes. And to build great self-awareness, there's the perspective, the relationship, the awareness we have with ourselves, but also the others. So the level of self-awareness is defined on how good, how transparent you understand yourself, your own emotions, but also the emotions from others. It's this level of empathy. So many times in C-level, so the higher we go, they're missing that feedback component because you don't have necessarily the same structure like you would have in a team structure or in mid-management, where you have 360s and all these type of things. So the higher you go, it's actually really important for those, for these C-level managements to go through exercises like this to kind of keep in touch with them.
And similarly, I guess that applies, for somebody, say like myself, I'm a, owner of the business, then it's it can be a lonely place, so like you say, you're not actually getting that much feedback or interaction in that sense. So, so there's some real value in that.
In self, I feel like, as being self-employed myself for so many years, we're just in that. And we're just accepting so many things. And we're not differentiating an emotion, right? We're just feeling a certain state. My favorite emotion is being overwhelmed. Yep. 99% of the time we hear that. Yep. And then you ask, well, what makes you overwhelmed? How does this overwhelmed feel? In which situation does that appear? Can you separate it, like I said, in a specific time of the day? So if we're trying to take that apart, there's so many layers to it. And then you actually understand, oh, wait a second, I'm not generally overwhelmed. It's actually that situation at that point of time with this type of people or this type of work that creates that type of emotional reaction inside me. Yeah. So maybe I should focus, changing that versus just being depressive and feeling overwhelmed, which overshadows my entire day and performance and well-being.
And doesn't shift because nothing that's happening doesn't fixes that.
Exactly. And also because you sit there and say, well, it's all is bad, I'm overwhelmed, because you have already accepted that is that's totality of things that's my state.
This is my reality. This is just what it is. Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Well, and I guess, an embodiment of that is when you go to events and how are you going? Good. Busy. That's another, it's just the state. What are you? You're busy. Probably more than that.
I never understood that, to be honest.
Right?
That was something too. I never understood why people always say they're busy and they say it in a way that it makes them feel good. The way they would say it it sounded like that's something positive.
Like they're happy. It's said in a similar way.
I'm busy. I'm successful. There's this association with you be busy, you be successful, you have a lot to do. And more and more you see a shift in leaderships or in company owners who said, actually, I'm happy. I have nothing in my calendar today, or we're protecting these things more, or I actually am not busy. That allows me finally to think about something. Earlier we talked about innovation. So we need space to clear your mind and to think freely. And you can't do that if you're constantly busy.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I completely agree. All right. So let's talk about then that first level, which and talk about, even though we're not using emojis, these icons that you're using as a way for somebody to identify, start to identify how they feel about things. Talk us through how that works for, say, an employee.
So the app asks people to write down their activities, like I described it earlier, from your morning coffee to meetings, etc. And then it comes with an associated question: how did that activity make me feel?
Okay.
And so instead of now answering these questions in a verbal, in articulating it through conversation or in writing it down, we decided we use symbols because most people cannot articulate their true emotion on a specific task or a specific kind of sensation they feel in their body, because usually the emotion is somewhere in your body. Yep. You somehow don't really know what it is. And many times you just, in this example that you said earlier, you just said, I'm good. So we're shortcutting it. So we avoid the real emotion, or we avoid, to face it. And then we kind of do what we do. And we just say we're good. So we use symbols instead. We have a heart symbol that stands for everything that is energizing, to simplify it. So it's not just everything that gives you good energy, It's a law, stands for love, of course, something you like. But let's simplify it gives you good energy. Then we have a flame, and it's not lit up. It's not a positive emoji with it. Is sometimes used. This comes from burnout, so that's why we used a flame. And these are these are emotions that drain you. Something that makes you feel little. You kind of like, you're losing energy. You don't be excited or anything like that. Sometimes it can be fear and other things as well. So we use that symbol for that. And then we have a line. It's our neutral sign. You can use that when you don't really know what it is. And that's totally normal. So sometimes we just don't know whether it's energizing or it's draining. It's just something, it's there, but I can't really categorize it yet.
Yeah, okay.
That's how it works. So we use symbols. The reason why is it gives more people access to their emotions because it simplifies them. And two, a picture like a symbol in association with an emotion is easier to access for somebody. You can see that, for example, I like to say in real retail, back in the days, we used to do surveys and then we did surveys with smileys, right? So the interaction with the surveys where you touch a smiley, how was this experience, is much higher than it is with, verbal feedback or something, of course. And it's not just because it's time. There's this urge when there's a symbol that people want to interact with it because it's this clear distinction. So that's pretty unique to us. So we developed our own 3 symbols, and that's kind of like what you can see throughout the app. So you see these symbols not just in these activity widgets, what we call. You also can rate your day overall with one of these 3 symbols, and then you can categorize and compare your analytics based on these 3 symbols.
Okay, and so that then is the layer of the analytics is what that means, say, over time, I'm betting, but also is it trying to help identify activities that are particularly draining versus energizing? Correct. Is that like some themes? Is that what you're looking for? Is some things that appear?
So you have the emotion itself, and then we have another layer. It's called tags, which are completely customizable. And so tags could be something like accounting, a personal, can be in a project ID, a client name. So for those who work with clients, I always encourage to use a client name as a tag, because we do have these clients who really energize a team, and we do have these clients who actually take a lot of energy away. So as a leader in leadership, we want to know, which clients are what, and what are the reasons why those are draining and those are giving more energy. So there's a lot to uncover then behind. So, but that's what you can see in the analytics. You then can compare these tags with each other's. For bigger plans, for bigger teams, we say 20 plus. We have also the abilities to compare teams with each other's based on their emotions. But what we never do, that's very important to us, you can never see the identity of a user or an employee in these analytics. So all the input you do is always anonymous. It's impossible for leadership or account holder to see, Peita is doing X, Y, Z. So it's only on the top level of a team. And even though in teams we have certain restrictions, so we pretty much eliminated the possibilities to spy on people or to use our tool for decision-making to hiring or firing. That's not the intention of the tool.
So that covers, one of the questions I always cover is, what business or practice in our instance for financial advisors would this work well for, and who wouldn't it work well for? Clearly, if they're obsessed with monitoring and I want to know every detail, then this isn't for them because it's not giving them that. This is not designed to give leadership or the business owner detailed insight into every task a team member does in a day. That's not the point, and that's not what's going to be provided.
No, it only gives it on a team level.
I think that is unnecessary. Like, it's not something that I think is good, but some people in this new environment with people working from home, and I mean, our practice is fully virtual, get obsessed with, I want to know what's happening every minute of every day.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have these conversations because I think it's there are a lot of reasons why I wouldn't advise doing that. There's no proof that it actually works. Like there's all proof that it creates the opposite, like controlling your people, monitoring the people on a task level base. There's something like, you need a circle of trust and psychological safety to be to perform in your best self. And we have all these beautiful statistics, how much billions of dollars, in this example, the United States companies are losing because of people are not fully present or having sick days, etc. So my belief is always, I hire people so I get their full potential.
Right.
So I need to nurture this potential, and controlling and micromanagement never nurtures the potential of people. And that's not my personal opinion. There's like 1,000,001 studies around that.
Yeah.
So we don't do that. You can, but so to kind of like emphasize that you can, of course, see a lot of great things. So you can see, for example, we call it, it's like a pulse, a health pulse of your organization. You can see, is it a temporary peak, whether negative or positive, or is it a trend? And if you see trends, then you can counteract. You can offer preventative measurements. We also have a process where there's frequent coaching input from experts who go over the data with the account owner. And if we identify, specifics, then we would recommend specific coaching, which is nothing that MUA does, but our network partners are offering.
Beautiful.
Or the company already works with organizational developers or other coaches, then we would give data input for them so they could create programs that help, help whatever needs to be helped.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think, look, it's such an interesting conversation in this whole virtual hybrid in office, like this new world we're in. And even small, what surprised me is even small businesses that therefore can be nimble. Like we can react to those things a lot faster than, big businesses who have 10-year leases. Like this is not a small thing that they need to consider, right? Whereas for us, generally, our ability to react is a lot quicker and we can sort of make different choices. Even in that environment, the old constructs we hold on to and the stories we tell ourselves to justify those. It's if they're in the office, I've got more confidence about what they're doing. And I remember having that conversation with a principal of a practice, and I said, well, but they could just be playing Minecraft on their computer in the office. Like, it's this. So, the trust needs to be there no matter what. Like it doesn't matter where they are. It doesn't matter even if they're on the other side of the world. You're right. These things are not, monitoring and micromanaging in either place is damaging and it doesn't get you the outcome you're looking for.
And the other level maybe on that is, since you just created that picture of, a person needs to sit on the desk, and then our understanding of productivity is there's a doing, like there's some sort of movement, tapping on the keyboard, clicking mouse, being loud on the telephone. I'm concerned what happens up here in their mind. Yeah. Whether or not they're engaged in their job, whether they're like proactive, problem solving, doing what I hired them for, or they're just hacking on their keyboard and basically do nothing. Right. So I think we'd really have to shift our understanding of what defines productivity. And two, of course, with the increase of artificial intelligence, what actually is what is our role as humans? Like, what are we contributing uniquely? Maybe even now in future, the question, what can we contribute uniquely and better as machines? Yes. And that goes back to our mind, the emotional context of us humans. So, but honestly, we are really weak in that, what defines us as humans and what we could contribute uniquely. So I'm really passionate about helping people, to train and to re-identify our emotional context and to be in touch with ourselves. And interestingly, how we start, being much more, all these qualities that we want an employee to have, they all start in their minds. Yes.
Yes. And, you mentioned EQ before, and I'm, one of those people historically that, I'm a geek. I study easily, maths is innate to me, and people focus a lot on IQ. And it's always bothered me a little, in part because the way that, say, things like universities and these formal education places measure intelligence is by being able to repeat something back. And to me, that's not a lot about smarts. That's about repetition. And that's a different thing entirely, right? Whereas problem solving, critical thinking, like these things that have an impact on another human being, right? Where you can change their future, where that transformation, that is a different type of intelligence. And to me, leans far more into the EQ side, because I think by knowing ourselves better, we're going to be more able to help others. I think that's, like you were saying, that empathy, almost empathy for ourselves in terms of understanding why, understanding where it's coming from, I think will then translate. And for financial advisors, that's probably the biggest impact we can have.
Absolutely. I think absolutely for everybody who deals with people and advises people, not just like I said earlier, this concept of self-awareness, it goes beyond yourself. It goes to to your surrounding. It's the ability to understand how someone else is feeling and having, addressing this with empathy, not just by casual saying, oh yeah, I hear you, or something like this, or sometimes that even can be helpful. Yeah. But so I absolutely agree with you. For these type of works, I think EQ is highly important. I think IQ comes from an old concept of industrial, epoch that we don't have. Like repetition at this time was what was needed. Probably that's why we were all trained that way. Yeah. But I believe now more and more different qualities are important to us as humans, and I really think we should nurture them.
Absolutely. And in fact, now that, and this is literally just a realization as we've been talking, but if we're trying to distinguish between AI and as you said, you're on LinkedIn. You can't open LinkedIn without there being something about AI, right? It's all there. Then when I think about AI, that more closely connects to IQ, right? Because it's information, it's analysis, it's data, it's all of those things. Whereas as humans, the thing that differentiates us from that is EQ. That to me is now I'm simplifying massively, but I think that actually helps me understand where I can develop myself to then not counterbalance, but to see AI delivering one element, sure, but it can't deliver the other, and that's where we can double down on. That's where we can develop ourselves to, really go forward.
Also, if I may add, I think that the question with AI then of course becomes, so on that rational level, and I want to call IQs in some sort rational. Yep. It will outbeat every human. Yep. It's just what it is. Yep. So the question then is, and I think that's where the fear comes from many people in how fast AI is developing itself and becomes that super intelligence. So our job, in my opinion, in the future becomes to kind of build the parameters in what type of world do we want to live, that world still is human. Yes. The human experience needs to be possible for us to be identified as humans. Yeah. Because, and that's kind of I believe the balance. And again, here, the emotional intelligence, the context of emotion is highly important to counterbalance and to design that future world.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's for us as individuals. Then, like you say, we connect that through our teams, and so in the business. And I'm betting that, by improving emotional intelligence over time and applying some focus and energy to that, then their resilience and their ability to adapt, all those sort of things, there's a strength that gets behind those. What you may not be aware is, so financial advice as an industry in Australia is, well, it's effectively been under siege for a couple of decades, it feels like. It's one of those industries, lots of legislative change, lots of, in-depth look by government, all sorts of things that have gone on. And so that ability to, so that the build up or the well of resilience, I think, is going to be something we probably underrated historically because it wasn't something we ever focused on, but we're going to still need that. It's just going to be a given, I think, for our industry that this is just going to continue. We're going to be under the microscope forever. So I like the idea of giving our teams some tools that will help them with that, and of course let them thrive. Fantastic. Let's give them something that really unleashes them.
And communication, one of my most favorite elements or qualities that we contribute to teams and organizations is the way they talk with each other.
Right.
Because there's no better conversation that you can have with someone who actually can articulate, what do I need? How can you help me?
Yeah.
In a very specific form is the best foundation for a team to self-solve problems.
Yeah.
And to thrive and to, build camaraderie and all these beautiful qualities that we always look out for. But where should they come from? Because most team situations are, as we said earlier, I'm overwhelmed. Like it is this definition of this is how I feel. Nothing is possible. I don't have time. I can't deal with this. All these avoidance and rejections.
Yeah.
Because we don't have that clarity within ourselves. We can't be specific. But that's kind of like what I love on MUA, and when we talk and work with organizations together, is when that stage fades out and the new stage come in and people actually say, you can help me and this is how you can help me.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful, because then this self-dynamic kicks in, and that's what I love to see when we, you don't need a lot. This goes back to control. You don't need a lot. Usually teams organize themselves beautifully. Yeah. Because we all want to do good things and we all want to be happy. Yeah. And being productive in our work is contributes, largely to our state of happiness. So I don't fear, when I don't need to see somebody, but we definitely need to nurture that culture so that people can express and live who they truly are. Yeah. And the rest is kind of like it's really an automatism. It just works magically by itself.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the best way to go about it, isn't it? Is when like with what you've designed is these small things. Let's just add a small thing we're going to ask to add to what you're doing, and then let's get some insights from that. And then to make any change, when we're trying to do behavioral change for money, like giving somebody a 40-point plan with lots of difficult and traumatic things, it's just not going to get there, So, awareness is where you start, right?
You could use the same exercise. We have tested it in the field of addiction. You could do that behavioral change. It's that simple thing. It's very, very simple, but it's very impactful. And the fun thing too is it grows with you. Right. So the more aware you get, the symbols, many times we got the feedback, why don't you add more symbols? And so that I can, or why don't you do 0 to 10 or something like this? And I always said, there's something like a baseline of awareness. So what is hard for me today, in 5 years, in a year, in a month, is feeling entirely different. So the way I chose or I relate with this emotion will change. So for me, it's always accurate. Yeah. So I don't need 1 to 10 and add all these complexity to it. Yeah. It's still the same. And it does what I want it to do. So I don't need it. So let's keep it simple.
Yeah. And you're so right in terms of it being an icon or an image or a symbol as opposed to a number. To me, maths is a bit of a language for me because that's the way my brain works. But for many people, when they look at those 0 to 10s, it's like, oh, for goodness sake, they'll just pick 5. Like it's just exactly because it seems easy, and I'm not offending anybody, and it's not on their end, or like it's not. My brain's like, right, well, if I assign this many points to this, right, like okay, fine, but for most people, it's not.
And two, because many times you see a 1 to 10, you think of the observer. You don't think of yourself.
Yes.
And so I see with the emotion, like the symbol is a bit different. Exactly. But that becomes different. It's more intimate. And it doesn't represent a judgment necessarily. Yeah. It's just a selection of a hopefully beautiful looking icon.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. So then, one of the things is, as a topic we always cover, is the extent to which an app impacts client engagement. Now, clearly this isn't going through to the end client, so it's not something they'll see as an app. But from what you were saying, it could provide great insight in terms of the types of clients that add energy versus subtract. So there'll be some great insights from a team's perspective and because it might not just be the individual, like it might not be the fact that it's Mr. Grumpalicious or whatever. It's just a pain in the neck to deal with. You might actually see some trends about a type of service that's just proving tough. Everybody just finds it super draining. And so it gives you that opportunity to take a look at it and go, oh, okay, wait a minute. Here are some themes, like you say, that are showing based on a certain client type as an example. Is that the case? Is that the sort of insights that you could glean over time?
Yeah, I would say yes. So I have not worked with financial advisors yet. So we have worked with marketing agencies, and we have realized that there's a huge difference between clients and many times, in addition to those who rather create stressors for teams, they're also the ones who the profit margin is rather limited.
Right. And why is that always the case, right?
But then, that brings you to an entirely other thing. So I believe too, in your economics, you should include something that I call energy available.
Yeah.
So so many clients not just, have a limited margin, they also take a lot of energy, which then takes away the energy from others who would convert it in a much more profitable way. So I think absolutely yes, to answer your question, you could do that. I also want to say that it of course enriches the relationship and the forms of relationships you have with your clients, because you communicate differently. I mean, people with that sense of awareness, and people who are not feeling stressed, or people who breathe before they pick up the phone, or people who have a calm in their self, communicate differently.
Yeah.
And that communication creates trust. So, and I would say in an industry like yours, that trust, that calm, that has a positive effect on the relationship I have with my client. And all these different things and nuances that maybe create conflict in the future suddenly, or did create conflicts in the past, now are, avoidable because you don't have that in you anymore. So I think in these service industries, advisors, there's a lot that we mirror out. And sometimes, we receive a lot, but we can train too to just not attach to these things. Sometimes that can be offended. Sometimes there's a lot of raw emotion, specifically when money is lost, or whatever the case.
We're all our highs and lows are linked so much to the share market and what it's doing.
So and then to have the ability to breathe, but also address it with empathy and compassion. I mean, that's more now from own experience with dealing with other service providers. Many times I think, wow, you could have just addressed it, or say, I hear you, I feel you. Yes, I know it's a difficult time, but this is what we could do. Like, if you don't keep the calm, if you don't have your emotion under control, how can you guide that person who is clearly currently in a difficult stage? So I believe our tool would help greatly to just improve your own ability of handling your own emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. So integration. So you mentioned that the tool can integrate with sort of the calendar, basically the calendar tool.
Correct.
So whether that's Google or Microsoft, that then you don't need to enter that meeting in to your sort of today's activity. That can be integrated, which is great. Okay. Any other integrations, or is that the main thing? Because it's mainly just about what happened in the day.
Yes, we currently don't have any standard integrations. We can do custom integrations. So if a client has a specific, let's say, a time tracking tool, that's something we hear often. We do, and there's an API. We are able, of course, to customize that. And many times it makes sense. We just don't have it as a standard integration a la carte for everyone.
Okay. And I should have asked, actually, so in terms of the user experience, is this something that sits in, say, Chrome, or is an actual app on the desk? Like, how does it work in terms of how they get to it, the team get to it?
So it's a browser-based software. Yeah, okay, so we don't have an app. The reason is mainly that, since we address companies, that was always our market, like B2B. We experienced that mobile apps can be rather tricky in a rollout. There's a lot of privacy concerns and data breach concerns with mobile phones. So we decided we be browser-based first. We are planning to do Chrome extensions and stuff like that. We work on specifics for the transportation industry, something entirely different, and there might be an app. So that's something on our roadmap and something I'm somehow super passionate about.
Yep.
So that kind of like the whole interaction can be much more on what we said with the retail space. It's more tapping the emotion instead of really going through the individual in and outs.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's all browser based.
Well, and given most of us are now operating in most of our tools are browser based too, then that's where we're living, so, it makes sense. And it then, working towards, like you say, a Chrome extension or things like that. I mean, that's how, for example, we use something called Guru or Get Guru, which is like our knowledge base.
Guru.
How good is it? It's fantastic.
Yeah, I love them.
Oh, yes. It's our IP. It's it. Like people talk about, selling businesses, and I'm like, well, that to me is the thing I'm going to tie up in a bow. Should we ever decide to sell in the future? Because it's literally how we do things. So it now sits. It too. Yeah, it now sits in our browser. It's just a little thing there, and we all just know to refer to it all the time. So I can see that as a natural extension of what you're doing. Is there anything else that's sort of down the track of on the development path, or even wish list? Like, I'd love it to get to this point. Is there anything like that?
Yeah, we have a lot, of course, on the wish list. One of the things that I'm excited about is like we will work to optimize our journal with more what if this then that kind of idea. So basically self-help through specific templates. We're also working on integrating AI actually to kind of like help contributing customized solutions, questions. So for us, it's all about asking the right questions to reflect on.
Yep.
The other part is body mapping. I would like to include body mapping so you can then assign emotions to your body. Like there's basically a body map because it's the body mind experience and getting an awareness of that as well.
Yep. Something
that I'm interested in that's not fully discussed, but I'm interested in. And then I think the bigger scale for us, and that was since the founding date of the company, we always had the passion to include persona type heat mapping.
Right.
There's like management systems, TMS, also an Australian one, for example. So basically at the end, if you look at our dashboard, you get an idea of what type of people work in your company.
Right.
And that's not specific in identity. It's rather the way how they react and deal and their emotional capacities to then build a culture and a team that is fully balanced with itself.
Right. And that's an interesting, as a female in a male-dominated industry, that type of approach, like I could see if a large corporate, so one of these financial institutions did that, what would there would be some of those themes that would be and I don't mean that it's necessarily gender based, but I think it would naturally be an extension of we're not getting enough viewpoints. We don't have enough diversity. Because I think that comes out in people's behaviors, the way they interact, the sort of things they're comfortable with, all that sort of stuff. The more insight we can get broadly of that, then you can start to see the holes. You can go, well, wait a minute, we're missing this thing. We're really weak on that side. So it's a fascinating sort of area as a bigger picture for corporates to go down. Yeah,
I think there's a lot for corporations. I think what we hear a lot at the beginning is always, well, but why? Like it just feels like too. It's not technical enough, or it feels like, again, it goes back to this concept of control, but what do I gain from it and how do I do that? We always want we always want that control. But I think all of those, when you let go of that control and actually empower your people, I mean, we like to say that, but if you actually do that and you give back the authority to your teams and self-manage themselves, it's possible. And suddenly you have really a wonderful organization and a true culture that does all the things that you need them to do in a time that is constantly changing and asks so much from this workforce right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I wonder all the time. We see the world is literally transforming and we know we have to change and adapt. And at the same time, we just cannot. Yeah, there's this thing in change and humans that it's just hard.
It is. It's almost like our minds are like sheer bloody mindedness. It's that it's this resistance to change, isn't it?
There's just this conflicted inner stance that we have that we just don't want to change. But if you break that, and if you allow your people to do the work, it will happen.
Yeah.
And you will see that your organization truly thrives. It's able to go through these paths of change, because there are a lot of bumps on the road and there's a lot of transition. Innovation, again, I love that you said it earlier. Where should it come from? When not from that source of empowerment. It definitely doesn't come from control, to your point.
Yeah, so, absolutely. And it's interesting, when you were talking, you were just talking about, the positive emotion and things that light us up versus drain us. And it's something that, when I think about it, is lots of us, I guess, have just been trained that the same or the things that are repetitious that we know provide comfort. Like there's this thing in our heads where that's how we translate them. Now, people like me, I'm sort of more of a bit of a squirrel approach, so curiosity and things like that light me up. So I'm lucky in that sense. So change, all this, like I'm one of those weirdos that's like, woohoo, the great unknown, whereas most people aren't. But I think that's a conditioning. I think part of that is the way we're brought up and the experiences we have. So starting for even our teams to learn that curiosity can have a positive feeling, and that can therefore be more empowerment, therefore more growth, therefore, that's where, innovation, all these things are going to come from, is when we associate positive feelings to those.
But it starts there too with an experience, right? I mean, when you talk about yourself, I'm pretty sure you had a wonderful experiences or outcomes, that came through your path of curiosity. Yeah. So, but most people haven't had these experiences, so they're kind of like locked in their box. Yeah. And again, it's our, as leadership or as companies, it's our job. Again, you hire these people to receive their full potential. Yeah. So then do something for it so that they can come in their potential, so they can really contribute to your company's need and success. Yeah. And that's kind of like what sometimes bothers me, or not bothers, not the right way, what I just don't really understand. Why would you hire somebody when you then are not interested in really getting their full potential? Yeah. To only get a small part of who they are and what they can do, because you're limiting that part by your very actions. Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else we've missed? Like, is there any sections of the app that we've missed in terms of for people who are going to check it out and take a look at it for their teams? We covered everything. I'm just thinking. I maybe one. I think it's. I really want to emphasize. It's very simple to use. We have a full onboarding service. It's all for free. We have a great what we call customer success team. They're there also to give individual guidance. I think that's very important. So that it's there's a lot of flexibility. So we are always trying to make it work for the customer and really are interested in their own unique situation. Yep. I think that's where we also are different than others. Yeah. We are playing the advantage of being a young company where wherever it goes, you can even call us if you want. Yeah, fantastic. So my point is, we're not a large corporation and we really truly want companies to thrive, and we make it as easy as possible. So there's no huge investment, whether it's time or money, to get your team started and improving their emotional intelligence. Yeah, fantastic. This is so exciting. All right, Advice Explorers, if you'd like to find out more about MUA, then the website link is in the episode show notes. I've also included Julius's LinkedIn details. So I'm hoping that's all right, that if somebody's really curious, they can just reach out and sort of see where you're at, what you're about, and also maybe connect with questions, and you might forward them on to a member of your team. But then I'd encourage people to really start thinking about the way that we both support and engage our teams going forward. I think we all know it's something that's necessary, but up to this point probably haven't had something that was a tool we could just start doing that would just be a beginning, to doing these as businesses. So thank you so much for your insights. A fascinating conversation. I really appreciate your time, and I can't wait to see where you and MUA go, because I think it'll be something that can really change the way that we both run and, engage our businesses. So thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
So, what a fascinating conversation, right? I mean, normally I'd say, hey, are you a current user of MUA? But I'm almost certain that nobody listening to this podcast in the Australian financial advice sector is using this tool. It is in early stages and, is really just starting globally in terms of interacting with employers to use the tool. So I have no doubt you're probably not. However, it's really sparked some thoughts for me, I've got to admit, and I'm hoping for you in the way that we can potentially engage our teams and really, sort of help them thrive going forward. So I'd love to start that conversation on the Ensemble community platform. So if this is sort of lit your curiosity a little, maybe you just completely think it's a waste of time, all views welcome. So please feel free, head over to the Ensemble community platform and tag me. I would honestly love to hear what you think and, what your take is on this type of app and this type of insight into our teams. And as for my thoughts, well, look, so many things running through my mind right now. One of them is in relation to change management. So, and Julius mentioned that a couple of times. And as an industry broadly, well, there's lots of that, isn't there? I mean, that's a given. But even in our practices, there's a couple of key things that are going to be happening in the next maybe few years for anybody's business. One, there's probably going to be a major tech change, right? At some point, we're all going to go, right, I'm shifting from here to here, whatever that is. And I'm not talking ancillary apps. I'm talking, something fundamental to business. We're going to make a big change. So that'll require some change management in the business. The second thing is we're potentially going to shift quite significantly either the service we provide or who we're targeting. Right. So those are two major projects that we're going to be working on in the next few years. And change management is tough and quite honestly can be quite a demoralizing and negative experience for the staff depending on how it's, handled. So I can see a tool like this where it gives the team the opportunity to reflect on the work they end up doing on those types of projects, how it makes them feel and makes us better aware of how the team is feeling about it. Because I think, as entrepreneurs or business leaders, we can get very excited about these things and have just decided it's a good thing and that's great, but we aren't taking the team on that journey with us and we're not taking their temperature as we go. And so I think this can be a wonderful way to monitor and also help the individuals understand the reactions to these things, right? Understand that perhaps they're just reacting to the fact it's different. It's new, and this is a process we've got to go through. And when they get to the other side and see value, wow, that's going to feel really good. So I think there is immense value in that. I also think that, I'm a big believer, as you know, in curiosity and the power it has to innovate in our businesses. But what is clear from what Julius is saying is we need to, over time, associate positive feelings with curiosity, right? We need to have that as something we reflect on and notice, and that our teams are rewarded for being curious about something, for showing interest in something outside the box, for bringing a new idea to the team, for, all those sort of things. I mean, imagine the insights from the different types of team meetings you have and the way they feel about it broadly across the team. So look, I just think there's so many ways this could bring insights, and honestly at a cost, that is sort of ludicrous when we compare it against what we think those things are going to cost, so team building or employee engagement or any of these things feel and honestly are often very expensive. Whereas my understanding, I checked the website again, but US $10 a month per team member, right? So, for 120 US a year, you can be getting these wonderful thematic insights into how the team, per person, how the team are going, and, how they're feeling about things, and imagine contributing so significantly to your team's EQ. I mean, I don't know about you, but that feels fantastic as an employer. That feels like you've contributed, even if somebody's only with you for a certain period of time. Maybe it's a couple of years. That's the new world, right? We're not going to have these long roles in corporates anymore. Potentially they're going to be longer, but imagine for the time they're with you, you take them on a journey of discovery to resilience, to thriving. That just sounds magical to me. So I have to admit, no surprises then. I'll be taking a really close look at MUA. And we'll be considering how we roll it out and what we do. But look, I'm excited. I really am. And I think this is quite an unusual app for me to bring to your attention. And for those of you still with us that didn't sort of clock off in the first minute or so, thank you for your attention. But I feel like then we need to be more holistic, ironically enough, about the approach we take to technology and the benefits it can give us. And so I feel like this is, a gap in maybe what some of the things we've been chatting about to date. Now, I was just talking about curiosity, wasn't I? And we all know, Bionic Advisors, we need that curiosity as something that we develop as a muscle. So today's Curiosity Corner app that I wanted to suggest you take a look at is Spoke.ai. That's SPOKE.ai. And their tagline is smarter meetings with your AI assistant. Now, you can find them at spoke.app. And while what we were talking about before was a very emotive and therefore less tangible app usage, what we're talking about here is particularly tangible. So it's a bit of a counterpoint for MUA and what we were discussing. So this is a tool that can work with Zoom, Google Meet, and Microsoft Teams, so across the board of any of them. And it basically provides automated AI-driven minutes, video highlights of the meeting, and search for during team meetings. So it provides hands-free note-taking, agenda tracking, all those sorts of things. And in fact, highlights or specific talking points from a team meeting could then easily and almost immediately be captured with transcripts for training, for future reference materials, put them in your knowledge base if you use Guru, put them in Get Guru. And for me, for those of you holding virtual team meetings, lots of us are now, then I think this sounds like it's well worth a look. Now, there are elements of this that each of the tools do now provide, transcripts, things like that. They're starting to get better at note taking. This is sort of taking it to another level in terms of almost repurposing that content. What can you use it for? What snippets can you take out? So it's taking it to that next level. Very important that when you take a look, dive straight into the security and privacy settings, run them past your licensee. I feel like this is the type of thing that's a team meeting tool rather than a client meeting tool. But you know what? I think you need to look at that yourself and then check in with your licensee and how they feel about it from a security and privacy sense. But for any of us holding virtual team meetings, then I think it's absolutely worth a first cut and probably a bit of a play. I want to say a big thank you and shout out. This was actually a tip from Grant Miller, who's in the Ensemble community, in response to a post by Adele Martin, who's also in the community. So thank you both very much. And I'd encourage you, the listener, if you have other apps that work for you, or even an app you've seen, even if it's outside AdviceTech, technically outside advice, but you're curious about it and you're not sure about it, then please either drop a post in the Ensemble community platform and tag me, Peita Diamantidis, or reach out on LinkedIn because I'd love to know about them and I'd love to check them out as part of the podcast in a future episode. Well, that's all we've got for this week. Whew, it was a little bit of a longer one, so thank you for sticking with us. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you'll get your AdviceTech fix automatically sent to you each Friday. And if this episode has sparked some ideas or maybe a need for you for some ways to further engage your team and, connect with them and connect them with each other, then I would actually love to, and have done many before, of facilitated team building sessions for your particular team, tailored to you and them and what you're trying to achieve. And we work on building their curiosity muscle in their personal lives and then connecting that to how we can all work together and you work together as a team and innovate for your practice. So if that's of interest, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's LinkedIn/Peita MD, PEITA for Molly D for dog, I guess. Anyway, otherwise, I'll look forward to turning up in your earbuds next week. And remember, Advice Explorers, stay curious.